Hello and welcome to the Intentional Clinician Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Krauss, licensed professional counselor. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Karthik Ramanan. Dr. Karthik Ramanan is a naturopathic physician in the state of Arizona. He is also an inspirational public speaker. He hosts a show on YouTube about everyday mental health, and he's all about helping people who are ambitious and self-criticism. Dr. Karthik Ramanan, welcome to the Intentional Clinician Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Paul. Excited to be back.
Absolutely. Now, for listeners who are new to you, you were on episode 2 of this podcast, the second episode that went live, and at that time, you were not a doctor yet.
No, I was not. That was, a couple years ago, I think?
Yeah.
Seems like ages.
Yeah, that was 2017. Yeah.
That's right. I was in the middle of a 108-day mastication vacation, giving up chewing food for 108 days to overcome food addiction, and that was a good time. It was a good time. It was a good podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just curious, is the mastication vacation still online?
No, it is not.
Oh,
no, it has not been online for a little while.
Okay.
I do short juice fasts or water fasts and that sort of thing, but nothing extended to that degree since then.
Okay. Yeah. So just for your listeners who are reviewing this, you did go on a 108-day juice fast, which you called the mastication vacation. And I believe you posted a video almost every day of that juice fast.
Yeah. Actually, well, it was juices and smoothies. There was still fiber in there to get technical, but yes, I did post like almost a daily vlog. I think out of the 108 days, I think I posted 85 videos or something like that. So you kind of take the journey with me back then, but a lot has changed since then. Graduated from medical school in June of 2017, so it's been almost 2 years now. And actually, from 2 days from the recording of this episode is actually the 2-year anniversary of proposing to a woman who's now my wife, because we got married since then. But yeah, this was that June of 2017, which was soon after we did the first podcast. Got engaged, graduated, and and we got married last year in December, which we were out here for. So that was a good time.
It was an excellent, epic wedding in Arizona. It was probably one of the most epic weddings I've ever been to. And I don't use that word because it's trendy. I use it because it had 2 ceremonies, which was incredible and moving. So I appreciate you inviting us out to the wedding in Arizona. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you for the kind words. We definitely had a great time, and it was wonderful having you guys there.
Yeah, so I'm excited for our listeners to learn more about what you're doing these days, because I think you have a very authentic message with the way that you communicate in your videos and other recordings that you've been doing. And I feel that you have a large sense of transparency. Being a doctor, I don't know too many doctors that are very transparent and open about their personal life and their personal struggles. And I think because you are open about what you've gone through and what you're going through, even just on a daily basis, both your ups and your downs, I think that is why people are now seeking you out for coaching, consultation, being a patient, and also really, I think, just getting into your show and I guess your upcoming courses that you're doing. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think to touch on your point about being transparent, I think it's just critical, at least for me, I feel that way, because the reality is, there's people of authority who understand, either they've gone through something themselves or they've studied it. They've studied other people who are successful at it. There's so many ways to become an expert, but the way I see the things that I talk about in the realm of everyday mental health and lifestyle medicine and doing the things every day to stay healthy and live a long, fruitful life, it's challenging. We live in a modern world, and I don't think it's possible to be perfect all the time. And I don't think it's realistic. And yet so many of us have this idealized vision when we're in a dark place that the only way out of it is to be perfect, or we struggle with perfectionism. And we figure that if anything less than that ideal perfect diet and exercising every day and all these things, if we don't do it all, then it's worth nothing. And I think it's important to really show people that, yes, I'm a doctor. Yes, I've gone through a whole lot of training. I've helped a whole lot of people. At the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that I've got it all together, right? It just means that I'm maybe a half step in front of you and I can show you the way.
Yes, I love that. I think that is a fantastic attitude. I do think it's very uncommon and unique to you and maybe a few other people out there, honestly, because even watching doctors on television shows, I won't name names, but doctors that go on talk shows, I hear them, if they tell anything about their personal life, it's like this small wrapped up nugget that I feel like a ghostwriter wrote, and it's not like the full story. And that's cool. I'm not trying to criticize them because they have a ton of information that they're dispelling and helping the public, and that's great. But I really think that you talk in depth about your daily struggles, and yes, you have all this information, and there's so many ways we could go with this, because I was going to go on a tangent about how difficult it is to be healthy sometimes in a modern world, but I feel like I'm going to just put that on hold and ask you a little bit more about your own journey, because I think the story is very important to know how you came to this point that you are so open, and I know that you were open in the second episode, but I think that even more transformation and difficult times happened to you between this episode is being recorded in June 2019 and May 2017. I think there was, I think you called it a low point. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So to get my full story, you can listen to episode 2, but I'll give you the quick highlights. So I was pretty much overweight my whole life. And going into my 20s, I was working at a bank on Wall Street, had a pretty successful career there. And I was, successful by worldly standards, but I had this intense self-criticism, intense hatred, really, of who I had become. I could not seem to shake this sense of lack of purpose that I had. I just felt like I was going to work every day, doing my job, coming home, and was utterly lonely. I didn't have the confidence to, find the right person to, dating wasn't successful. And I was very lonely, and I didn't let people into my head. I didn't let people know. Like, I'm transparent now, but back then I would go to work and I wouldn't really share anything about my personal life with anybody, but I'd go there and I'd put on a mask and, be highly functional and everything was fine. But then I'd come home and I was just completely isolated. And I did that to myself because it was a protection mechanism. Well, anyway, after years of trying to lose weight and wasn't successful, I saw my sister after a 3-month span, and she had lost a tremendous amount of weight, and her skin had cleared up and she looked incredible. And I said, what did you do? She said, I went on a raw vegan diet. And I said, oh, okay, what's that? She said, I just eat fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds uncooked, just like they're found in nature. I said, okay, you are crazy. But I was at a low point. That was maybe the second low point of my life. And, we have these peaks and valleys, and that was valley number 2. The first valley, if you want to rewind, back in college, I was, had a serious loss of identity at that point in my life, and I was severely depressed for about 4 to 5 years. So but came out of that successfully. Now going back to 2011, and I was at this point, saw my sister, and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I started changing the way I ate and just ate more whole plant foods. And eventually the weight started coming off. I started getting more juicing and whatnot. And I realized, like, wow, I can have the body that I've always wanted. And I started exploring this, and people started being attracted to me to ask for answers, and I tried to help them out. And I didn't do much, but I saw type 2 diabetes go away, hypertension, cholesterol issues. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but apparently whatever I'm doing is reversing your chronic diseases. This is so fulfilling. I need to do this for a career. So eventually I moved to Arizona. I went to naturopathic medical school, which is also where I met my wife. And so, yes. And then fast forward, end of medical school, we did our first episode, was really in a very accelerated, very exciting time, right? We did the episode the month after that. And during that time, I was actually preparing for my proposal. So we had a talent show every year back in our medical school. And myself and a few of my friends, we rehearsed to do a couple songs, which really meant to outline the highs and lows of our 4 years there. So the lows was represented by The Sound of Silence, the Disturbed version. And the highs were Counting Stars by OneRepublic, which is actually a song that meant a lot to my wife and I. And anyway, at the end of that second song, it was the last act of the night, I proposed to her, and that was a high point, obviously. And then graduation, like 2 weeks later, I think, was another high point. So, and after that, you graduate, you're like, yay, success. But then turn around 5 weeks later, you have to take the board exam. So then, went through, took that exam, then you have to wait a while. But during that time, I didn't realize how drained I was, how tired I was, how much I had strayed in my heart from, the purpose that had driven me to medical school in the first place. Like, I didn't get there, and I didn't become this outgoing, public speaking, student government president person in medical school by being who I was in the years past. Like, back in New York, I didn't leave my apartments on the weekends. I didn't want to be seen. And here I was as this completely different person now, outgoing and really thriving on contributing to people and being transparent. But here was the challenge. We all feel like we need to fit in to some degree. We're a social species, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it takes some real mindfulness to be able to stand strong on your own. And even though I felt like I was doing that, I had slowly deviated from it. And the struggle that I had, after graduation, so here I was wanting to do these other things that didn't look like traditionally practicing medicine. I wanted to be a speaker. I was starting this, basically proactive care, health care model with a friend of mine, and doing these different things that didn't look like practicing medicine. Meanwhile, my fiance at the time was in a different city, 90 minutes away. So we were apart for the first time, and we were having to do the distance thing, and the stress and just the isolation and the feeling of almost loss of purpose was very strong, because you go from a very social environment to a very isolated environment. The one person that you spend the most time with is also not with you on a regular basis. We saw each other on the weekends mostly. And the whole of 2018, I was just unable to get any momentum going in my life. My weight started creeping up, and I knew that, my wedding was coming up, and, the stresses that go along, the stresses that go along with planning a wedding and the finances and all that stuff. So I was just at a point where I noticed that even the smallest things would cause breakdowns at a certain point. It was around April of last year, 2018. And it was around that time that I talked to you, actually, and you said, dude, you got to get some EMDR. And it was a hard pill for me to swallow at first, because I grew up almost with a sense of, if you get help, it's a sign of weakness. And if you're weak, then what's your worth, kind of thing. And certainly, our culture here in America is, again, masculine strength, don't show weakness kind of thing, all that added to it as well. And I didn't listen to you at first. I said, no, I can do this on my own. But ultimately I realized a doctor that treats himself as a fool for a patient. And we can't see ourselves the way that other people see us. We are so clouded by our own stories and our own belief patterns about who we think we are, that we cannot see ourselves objectively. And I just got to a point in June of last year. I guess we're approaching a year since I started my first session, but I got a referral from you. I found a therapist here, and I was just at this place again, low point number 3 of my life, where it hurt so much. I was in so much emotional pain that I had to take action. It hurt enough. And that's something I talk about, is like, when you're not changing it, it's because it doesn't hurt enough. Right. And it hurt enough. And I said, because I was at this point where I said, I don't want to be this person going into our marriage.
Right.
I'm getting married 6 months from now. I can't be this guy.
And actually,
it's not fair to my wife.
Yeah.
It's not. So that was the point that I said, okay, I'm going to do EMDR, and we can go into that here in a second. But that's basically, what got me to the front door of EMDR psychotherapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you told that story, and how you told it is very important, with some of the things that you just said about, we don't go sometimes until it hurts enough, until we're in enough pain, which is kind of like a human condition trait. We don't always do preventative medicine. And I remember the reason I wanted to comment on this, why I chose EMDR therapy for you, rather than just sending you to a regular talk therapist, is because you have a mindset, a positive mindset. You do all these positive, things in your life. You're working out. You're trying to eat right. You read positive philosophy. You're reading medicine books. So in my mind, you're a super high functioning individual who basically is just all of a sudden having this huge stress. I don't know what you want to call it, depression, loss of purpose, disconnection, isolation out of nowhere. And for a while, I remember you were telling me, no, I don't need therapy. I'm the guy people come to. I'm the guy that helps people. I'm the public speaker. I'm the man that, and I can't do that. And I said to you, the reason I'm choosing EMDR is because it's working on this almost subconscious stored information from past experiences that you've already overcome, but it's as if, in some situations, like our mind or body is still reacting like it needs to overcome. And, that's one of the ways. And just, it was some deeper stuff that was going on with you, where it was just, it was subtle. It wasn't like you had some secret past or something. It was there in the background lurking. And, just for our listeners, I do multiple episodes on EMDR, so you can check that out. But I think it was just so effective, and that's why I love trauma-informed counseling and trauma-informed care, which is what my entire practice is about and my center is about, while we do lots of other counseling and existential therapy and career counseling and all that as well, and family therapy. I really find EMDR so effective, and I love that you're willing to talk about your journey a little bit with that. You don't have to go into too much detail, but just the results you got from that in a short period of time, just from our phone calls, hearing you before you went to EMDR and hearing you after you went to 3 or 4 sessions I felt like I was talking to a different person. So yeah,
that's really awesome that you noticed that. And I felt like something was changing, but again, when you live inside your own mind every day, you don't notice the changes, right? They're very subtle on a day-to-day basis, but when somebody sees you talks to you after 3-4 weeks or even longer, the change is significantly noticeable. Well, I tell you what, though, I remember I was up in Payson visiting my wife that week, and it was during the week, and then I had my session, I think it was like on Wednesday or something, and I'm driving down to the valley, and I didn't have a panic attack, but it was mini because you want to know what my biggest fear was?
What's that?
I was afraid EMDR would work.
Oh, really? This is a plot twist. I did not know this was coming. Tell me more about this.
I was afraid it would work because here's the thing. I didn't realize this, but I always had a way out. If I managed to slip up something or make a mistake or didn't live up to my potential, I could always say, yeah, well, I got some darkness. I'm prone to depression if things consistently go against me and the stress continues to rise, and then breaks my coping mechanism. It's just who I am. It's just who I am. And I was afraid that it would work and I would have no excuses in life anymore.
Wow. That is incredible. Keep going.
So I told my therapist this, first session. And the first session, really we were just kind of talking, giving kind of her an overview of my life to that point. The second session was a little bit more game planning and treatment plan strategy. And I think it was the third session that we actually started the EMDR process. But I tell you what, the approach that we took was we went to kind of the root, we'll call it trauma. It wasn't really a traumatic event in what you would conventionally think of trauma, but any event that produces a result that hinders us going forward in childhood, is something to be aware of and maybe work on.
Yeah, or anytime, really, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything that sticks with you that you can't shake.
Yeah, exactly. And this was something that stuck with me, that was one of the pillars and foundations of a deeply, deeply held self-criticism. And I'm not just talking about self-doubt. Oh, I don't know if I can. It's not, I don't know if I can. It means I am incapable, unworthy, unlovable. This is not meant for me. I'm worthless.
Wow. Deep, it was hidden, because if anybody knows Dr. Ramanan, Karthik, you would never suspect this was the case. And I'm talking about pre-EMDR Karthik. People think, I don't know, it's just an assumption, I think, because you're such a positive guy and you help so many people that they got to think, wow, Karthik, man, he's got it all together. And, I'm sure if somebody said, do you think Karthik has some sort of deep-seated, not, thinking is unworthy, they would have said, no. Are you kidding me? I mean, isn't that true? I don't know. That's my perspective.
Probably. And the thing is, I thought I had overcome that, but that was the gift of the year of 2018 for me, was that everything was going against me professionally, personally, was a strain being away from my fiance, my wife now, all these things. Right. And, and then financial struggles, a whole bunch of different things. And when those things start to pile up, that stress starts to really reveal what is truly underneath.
Yeah.
So yes, maybe I developed a lot of strong, beliefs and behavior patterns and on all that stuff, which is fine most of the time, but it didn't stand the test of the pressure of 2018 for me. And that's what the gift was. Along with your suggestion of going for EMDR. So what we did was we started with a root wounding, we'll call it, right? And then that was 6 years old. And then, there's different events that as a child you produce different lessons, like about myself, that I'm not an athlete, or I can't run, or whatever the case may be. There was a lot of those type of things too. And then as life goes on, we find events that reaffirm those beliefs, and now it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. To the point that we don't even remember sometimes where it came from, but it's incredibly strong. And we're like, no, this is the truth of the universe. No, it's not. You decided that long ago. It doesn't have to be if you don't want it to be. So we started at the root of the root one was I'm unworthy. Right. It was an event that helped build that foundation, that everything. And over 2 weeks of going through EMDR, so 2 sessions, 1 hour each, by the end of the second week, I mean, I'm telling you, Paul, it's not even the conscious thoughts, and it's not even the subconscious thoughts. It was also like my autonomic nervous system was performing better. I was no longer constipated. Think about that.
I did not know
insane.
that. I mean,
I was holding on to so much pain, right? And my digestion's been amazing ever since. I didn't change my food. So
I've heard reports like this, but I actually did not know you were going to say that. I didn't know that was a thing.
It was incredible. I was just walking around doing my thing, going, okay, I feel different, but I don't really know until something happens. Then maybe I react a little bit differently. Maybe what used to be a trigger is no longer producing the same effect. Anyway, we go through the different memories and reprocess all of them, and it's a double benefit because A, you're removing the limiting belief that came from that memory, and you're allowing your mind to heal itself and create something positive out of that memory. So you get like a double swing. You erase the negative and you add a positive. So at the end of 13 weeks, I truly, truly felt like a new man because I had a new nervous system, effectively. And that was really the birthplace of, my professional journeys. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But I and not to mention just the personal side, I went into the wedding feeling like my best self, and now just being able to be the best husband I can be, because that's ultimately the reason why I wanted to do whatever I had to do, because it meant the world to me to make sure that I was in the right place going into our wedding.
That's amazing. I think that's such an inspirational story. And on a lot of the podcasts, I've talked about EMDR and how it works and how it could help. But I believe this is just a beautiful story of how it helped. And it wasn't even that long that you were in therapy. I think you really benefited quickly. And just for the listeners to understand what Karthik's talking about with the constipation is that I talk to physical therapists a lot about this, and they find a lot of times people have physical problems, and sometimes they have a very physical basis. Well, maybe most of the time. But there's oftentimes they get people in their offices who are having strange physical aches, pains, parts of their body that won't stretch, chronic indigestion. I mean, just all sorts of things like that. And a lot of times they actually, the good ones, can recognize that some of it is somewhat psychological. And what that means is that at the time when trauma began, or the message of the trauma, the body is also, the autonomic nervous system is also reacting on a subconscious level that we may not even be aware of unless we're really body aware. And so you noticed all of a sudden relief. And I've been through EMDR myself, and I've noticed just on a small level, even when I'm working, maybe not on like some core trauma, but just on some other things that happened, I'll notice leaving my therapist's office, my shoulders feel looser. I feel more calm, controlled. I feel that I would like to, be nice to everyone I come into contact with, whether it be like a store clerk or whatever. It's just, you feel physically different. It's not just mentally or psychologically. So I'm really glad you brought that point up. And I love that you just were like, I've got to do this. Like, I'm going to my wedding. I'm going to this new professional place. And interestingly, this difficult, dark place that you were in that took, months to get out of, you then took your experience in EMDR and it actually changed some of your business model and the way that you were approaching you're still in the same ballpark being the speaker and helping people on lifestyle medicine, but it changed some of the trajectory of your actual business plan and what you're doing now. And so I just am so inspired by that, because I think oftentimes you've heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know, right? But I believe there's this thing that happens with people, especially when they're depressed or anxious, where they have some sort of, they're kind of blind to it, but there's a belief system going on that they think they know, well, it's only if it does get better, it could only get this much better. Or I don't think I could ever get better, which is one I hear a lot. Or, well, I could get better in some areas, but that area is never going to get better. Or just about their life. Hey, have you ever thought about trying this? Have you ever thought about changing careers? Have you ever thought about trying to date a different type of person in terms of their personality? And no, I could never do that. That doesn't work for me. And it's almost as if they believe they can read the future. And I feel like that's depression or anxiety talking there. And so when you did this, it transformed you in a way that you could have never imagined before the process, because you started thinking of new ideas and became even more creative, to the point where your videos, and I was asking, are your videos still online? I feel like you took them down, because your new videos, it's like night and day, I like those videos. I thought they were great. I told you they were wonderful, but your new videos, it's like you're ready for cable TV, if that's still a thing, or Netflix. So I think it's great how you discuss psychologically it helped you be your best self going into your wedding, which is obviously relationships are number one, very important part of being a human being. And then it helped you feel better physically, which was a surprise. I didn't know you were going to say that. And then number 3, I noticed that, and I think you've said this, that all of a sudden you had all this creativity and you just came up with even more awesome ideas, and your performance level increased. So that's what I'm saying. I'm so inspired by it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I it's true. All of that, 100%. And it's fascinating what you mentioned about, people almost have a limiter about either I can never get better, or I can only get so much better, or this area of my life is impossible to improve. And we all do this. It's not like it's a wrong, bad thing. I think people, especially those of us that are prone to self-criticism, it's very easy to say, well, yes, I always mess up. I always do it the wrong way and things like that. That's human nature. We're designed to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you want to change, you have to take off the limiters. And sometimes it's just, life circumstances will help you get there by giving you enough problems, And I was in that place where it was, because if I look at the 3 situations, I was in deep depression in college. How did I come out of it? Well, it was the desperation of, I had a job offer going into my graduation, and a week before I graduated, the company pulled the offer because it was a startup and they couldn't do it. So I graduated with nothing in hand. And oh man, those 6 weeks after that, I hustled so hard to try to get something going. And finally, when I got it, it was a job that I never thought I could get before.
Dream job, really.
It really was. And they valued me. And that shattered my perception of like, hey, I'm not good enough when they actually value me, right?
Yeah.
And the second one was, again, with the weight issues and the loneliness issues back in 2011. Again, I was just at a point of desperation, whereas if this is going to be me now, I'm just going to be, overweight and alone for the rest of my life. Desperation, took action. And then again, last year, I don't want to go into my wedding like this. I can't do that to my wife. I can't do that to her. So desperation, took action. When you're in those states of desperation, you take off the limiters, because it's like, I surrender. Now, it's not enough to tell somebody you just got to surrender, just let go, right? Because it's like, just hold a pen out in front of you, right? And listen to the verb, try to let go. Don't let go, try to let go. Yeah. You're not going to let the pen go, right? So but you just have to get to that place. And sometimes it's just a matter of, filling your mind with, maybe it's the self-help books, maybe it's talking to people like us, until you get to the point you're like, okay, now I'm ready. Right. And I just had to get to that point that I was ready. One thing I did want to say about how it improved, going into my marriage, obviously going into the wedding itself was unbelievably stressful. Right. And we were tired. It was, incredible wedding, memories for a lifetime, and just had everybody with us. It was an amazing time. And after that, we went to Kauai and Maui for 2 weeks for our honeymoon. Came back immediately, spent time with her family for Christmas, and then drove back here. We had a property that we flipped into an Airbnb. And finally, after a whirlwind month, we just kind of crashed in the beginning of January. And we're just starting to, at that time, we were just starting to like figure out, okay, how do we want to pick up and, start this married life? And I tell you what, I would have never been able to handle all that without EMDR. Never, yeah. Because all of that stress, anything that triggers you, that makes you feel like I'm not good enough, that makes you feel I'm not worthy, that makes you feel I'm not lovable, that makes you feel I'm not capable, that I'm not powerful. All those stories, like you go through a stressful time, that stuff is going to come up, and it's going to hinder you being able to perform to your best, to your ability. And so EMDR absolutely made that season of my life feasible and helped me, perform to the best of my ability. And then also, to talk about relationships, that's probably a whole nother podcast episode that we should get into. We'll do that one. But, yes, we've been married 6 months, but we've been together for almost 5 years. And one of the things that Samantha and I are very, very good at, like our superpower as a couple, is communication. And we have our triggers and whatnot, but we work on the triggers, we alleviate them. EMDR helped me tremendously with that. Right. But we you have to, if you want to be in a good relationship, you have to be in a good relationship with yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would have never found her if I didn't work on me first. Again, it's a whole different episode, and we will do that one. But it's like, if you want a why, like, what is your pain point in life? And recognize that the only thing holding you back is the stories you tell yourself. And there are absolutely ways of getting through that. There are absolutely ways of achieving what you want to achieve. You just have to be willing to let go of the things that you hold on to as truths about yourself and accept what is actually true about yourself.
Which is release a risk.
Who you, yeah, right. Just release who you think you are supposed to be and accept who you are.
And I want to say that's a risk, because I think anytime you try something new, so you talked about, our basis is our brain is trying to keep us alive at all times. And so our brain comes up with stories and little tricks to protect us. And, like an easy example is somebody who is afraid to go out because they're fearing rejection, and they have social anxiety, and they have never taken the time to practice, have the buddy system, get some consultation on how to do that. And so they just tell themselves, well, I'm a loner. I'm always going to be a loner. No one's going to like me. And then these stories are deep inside and ingrained. And so I think it's a risk to start accepting that you're a worthy human being, and that you've had difficult times that have told you messages, and your body's trying to protect yourself, your brain's trying to protect yourself. So a lot of times we are stuck in our patterns. And the idea of just having the awareness that you're telling yourself a story instead of it's a fact is one of the first steps before you can go further. But a lot of times we do need someone to help us. We need a counselor, a therapist, a mentor, a book, an e-course, a podcast, something to help us guide through our blind spots, because we all have them and we're all human. And it is difficult in our culture, which can be somewhat isolating due to the way it currently functions. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that, because when you talk about letting go of the pen, I think that people are afraid that if they let go of the pen, they'll never be able to pick up the pen again. Like, if I let go of this identity, then I can never go back to this. Well, no, you always can, so
right.
That's the hard part. Is it is a risk, because when you do something new, usually you're also not going to be very good at it, because you haven't practiced. You have no practice. So the person who's trying to overcome social anxiety, for instance, they have no practice, or not no practice, they have little practice being social in the new way. And to be social in the new way, that when they're out and about, or whatever their activity they're involved in, they must do new things, which is a risk, and can face rejection and can face disappointments. But a lot of it, I would say most of it, unless they're in an abusive, bad situation, oftentimes is going on inside their head, inside their own filters, inside their own mind, and it's translated inaccurately. And so that is why it's just so important to figure out what stories you are telling yourself, and look at to what is possible. Not everything in the world is possible to everyone at any time, but a lot more than you think is possible in your life.
100%. Like, we rarely give ourselves enough credit for what we're capable of. On an honest level, it feels like it's either not giving ourselves enough credit, or just this blind, hubris that still doesn't end up with the desired result. But yeah, it is risky, but at the same time, I think you have to start to think about, what does your present state, maybe it's a diagnosis, let's say rheumatoid arthritis or whatever. It might not seem related, but ask yourself, what does my present state and my present suffering allow me to do that I would not be able to do if I were healed?
Yes, absolutely. You have to almost imagine that. You have to kind of go further into picturing that.
Yeah. I mean, there was a clinic that I was at, and patient was, coming in for lupus, and something that she had been struggling with for a long time. And she's leaving. and see her license plate, and it was something like Lupus One or something like that. That's part of your identity.
Oh my goodness.
How are you going to let go of that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're so attached to your diagnosis, if you're so attached to your problems, if you're so attached to, my parent did this to me and screwed me up for life, or whatever the story is, right? You can hold on to it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We're not making any judgments here. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
It's a protective measure.
Just that it's a protective measure, right? Like that's what our brain is designed to do. Fundamentally, that's what it's designed to do. The problem is, for every action, there's a reaction. And if you don't like the result, the reaction, then you have to change the action. You have to change what you're doing and how you're being in order to get the desired result. To go back to the relationship, I, for years and years and years, was always wondering, like, I'm the nice guy. All my friends who are women say I'm such a nice guy, and nobody, like, how come it doesn't translate into, any kind of success in dating or whatever, right? And it's because I wasn't being the person that I would need to be in order to attract the person that I needed. And finally, when I did work on myself and I became the person that I was meant to be, that I truly am, and I gave up, like, searching, so to speak, then we, Samantha and I just connected. And it was like I shouldn't say it was effortless, but it was so natural that I remember, even though it was 5 years ago, I still remember just going, is this happening? Is this real? And because I had become my truest self, and she had gone through something and become her truest self, and we were in line, right? So you have to be a certain way in order to get the result that you want. So if you don't like the result, you have to change who you are being.
Well, and you have to be open to feedback. We don't want to make this about being perfect at all, but
not at all.
I believe that. So this is not what this is about, but you need feedback from trusted people. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses and conform and do whatever it is that you think that, maybe there's some aversion to sort of that talk of getting feedback and on that, because you were a nice guy, and you did a lot of good things. But when you did your personal transformation, you didn't need to look for a woman anymore. You didn't need to read a blog about how to date and how to text people and how to be romantic with a woman. If you are in line with who you are, what your best version of yourself is, what you're seeking, whether it be a relationship, for most people, a lot of people want to be in some type of relationship, or a job, or a new path, or some answers, it's gonna come a lot easier versus trying to, what I call, white knuckle it, where you're gripping so hard to trying to do it the right way, the perfect way, and you've got all these ideas about who you are, and it's not fair. How come I'm the nice guy? Why isn't somebody noticed that? Well, the feedback comes from others. How am I being perceived? Not that you weren't being perceived as the nice guy, but you might have been perceived, I don't know, it's just speculation, as a guy who wasn't really quite sure about what he was doing in the world, and if it was a good thing that he was doing. 100%. And I part of that I know is because I'm cheating, because I know your story, and you were really good at your job, but it didn't fulfill you completely. So you're out of alignment with your true calling, or your true self, or whatever you want to call that. And so I would say the same about me. Like, I've got a lot of ideas, and one of the things I avoided for a long time in my life was getting feedback on my public speaking. And I remember I've taught classes. I've been a professor at a university. I have taught counseling groups. I have run group therapy. I've hosted a podcast. Obviously, hopefully the quality is increasing per episode. I've done public speaking events, and this is a confession, I've avoided going to, speaking classes and these sort of things to get rid of some of the colloquial things that I say and also to work on pacing. But for my last speech in Chicago in May for the National Violence Prevention Hotline at the Cultural Impact Conference, I sought some coaching. And I only did about 4 sessions, and I'm definitely going to have to do more before my next speech, but it was an incredible transformation, because it doesn't matter if I think I've got good ideas and I want to bring something into the world. What matters is partly, what matters is how are people perceiving what I'm bringing into the world. Obviously, we believe what matters is on the inside and how you are at peace with yourself. But I needed to come into grips of not just hanging on to what I thought, but I needed to get the feedback of others to say, hey, I like this, a trusted person, but when you did this, that didn't work for me. And when you moved your leg like this, and when you talked like this, I lost interest in your discussion, and authentic feedback. So having a trusted friend, mentor, counselor, coach, whatever, is so important to our growth, because we only know what we know, and we aren't looking at ourselves. We're looking out of our eyeballs in our skull at other people all the time. And we can try to be non-judgmental, but we all judge people. So
yeah, and
go with that. I'm on a tangent. Go for it.
So when you're talking about you don't have to change who you are, that's really important. At the same time, I'll put it this way. Who we are, I think, is more defined by our whys in life.
Yes.
The things that we believe in, right? The reasons we have for doing the things we do, being who we are, right? That is our true, deepest identity. And nobody is saying change that. However, there is how we say things, which is how we are perceived, that can be tweaked. And that would be like you getting speaking coaching, right? Yes. You're not changing your why. That's who you are. You're changing your how and maybe your what, like what are you saying, that is allowing the other side to understand your why better, rather than triggering, preconceived notions or just tuning out because they got too distracted on the leg shaking or whatever, habit that you had, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important to get that feedback and recognize, that you're ready for that feedback. So to kind of tie it into the business side of things that we were kind of talking about earlier. So I got to a point where I said, okay, you know what? I need to take my business more seriously and stop dabbling, start dominating, right? And
Ooh,
I invested in a course by Chalene Johnson called the Marketing Impact Academy, and I went to her conference back in February. Also, I had previously invested in a YouTube course by Sean Cannell, Think Media, and I got to meet him there, which was awesome too. And just being around those people and people that I learned so much from changed everything. Like, again, I could sit here and try to do this by myself, but I could take, invest a little bit in myself and find the fast track, learn from their wisdom, get their feedback. And that's exactly what I did. And that's, what you're seeing obviously in the difference in not just the quality of, let's say, the videos compared to where it was, during the mastication vacation, but also the clarity of message. Because here's the challenge that I had, right? So talk about the last 7-8 years. Things that I was passionate about that people used to come to me for answers on. Okay, I had lost 100 pounds. Karthik, how did you do that? Right? Or, right. Hey, you know a lot about juicing. You've juiced for 108 days. What juicer should I get? I could answer questions about that. So whether it's plant-based nutrition, juicing, weight loss, all that stuff.
Or eating. I also wanted to mention people that are having chronic diseases and helping them change their diet to have a better outcome with their chronic disease.
If it's reversing diabetes, type 2 diabetes or anything like that, hypertension, right? Cardiovascular disease, there's so much that you can do with lifestyle. And I thought, okay, that's probably what I'm going to do because that was my story. But I love talking about psychology and mindset, right?
Absolutely.
And this is before EMDR. If you listen to my mastication vacation videos, very little of it is actually about the details of, today I drank this and just juice. It was more about, well, here's what I discovered today. Here's a thought that I had that I really want to share with you. Here's a lesson. right?
Yeah.
And whether, it's that applied psychology or whether it's, an understanding of food addiction, that was the theme of that. So I could talk about all those things. So there's that. I've also gotten much more passionate about the importance of sleep and routines and that sort of thing, and how those influence. And I was like, how am I gonna, like? Here's what you have to do, right? When you're in relative obscurity, as a entrepreneur, content creator, whatever the case may be, when people don't know you yet on a large scale, you have to focus your message on one thing so that people know you for that one thing. And I was like, I don't know what I'm a naturopathic doctor. You know how many therapies and modalities that I learned, and between botanical medicine and acupuncture and mind body medicine, like all these things, how am I gonna narrow it down? Talk about hormones. What is it? What am I going to talk about? And that's when it just hit me that everything that I'm passionate about, everything that I've struggled with in life, all boiled down to one thing: self-criticism. I was overweight because I used food to numb my pain. Self-criticism. I was depressed because of losing my focus and my sense of purpose, because of self-criticism. I was struggling in making sure that my, going into my wedding, that I was able to handle the stress and the financials and everything like that because of self-criticism. Everything was due to self-criticism. And that's when I realized, hey, I've solved this problem. So yes, I can talk about all these different things, but fundamentally, what do I help people alleviate? And I thought about all the patients I've ever helped and whatever they came in for. They might have come in for something acute, but we end up having a deep conversation about life, And what did I find out? For the people that were attracted to me, self-critical. I help ambitious. So when I say I help ambitious individuals overcome self-criticism, it's because what I mean by ambitious is just people that know that they were made for more in this life. That's the place I was in. Like any of those low points, like this is not what I was made for. This is not the way it was supposed to be. I know that I can do more than this. I can be more than this to other people. I want more. So it's not about, riches or anything. It's about being of service to people, that I know that my life was meant for more. And those people that are on that tipping point, those are the ones who I serve, helping them overcome and end self-criticism so that they can actually take action, execute on the things that they love to lead a purpose-driven life. Because I feel like so many of us hold ourselves back due to self-criticism. And if you just take that away, everything opens up. The potential becomes reality. And how I do that is really by incorporating all those things I mentioned earlier, with tools and strategies to create optimal everyday mental health. So what I mean by everyday mental health is, there's, on one extreme, we have mental illness, right?
Right.
On the other extreme, there's, this idealized self-care. We should just all be on a beach in Costa Rica, sipping a Mai Tai. Like, this is self-care at its finest, and let's take a picture and put it on Instagram. I don't know about you, that's on my life, right? So there's somewhere in between that I call everyday mental health. I teach about 5 pillars of everyday mental health. One is your relationship with yourself, your psychology, right? That's most of what we talked about today. Number 2 is your relationship with others. So that's your romantic relationship, your relationship with your parents or siblings, close friends, that sort of thing. Number 3 is nutrition and fasting. So I promote eating more plants, more whole plants. So that's something I talk about a lot, as well as fasting. Number 4 is optimal sleep, because that's something that we all overlook, especially when we're ambitious and we're go-getters and we're doing things, right? But sleep is incredibly important, and there's ways of kind of constructing your life so that you have better quality sleep. And number 5 is exercise, because, well, we all know that getting your blood circulating is has so many benefits. And actually, again, talking about struggles, that's one of the things that has never come easy to me. I've never felt motivated to, do that consistently. So that's actually my next project here is for myself is I've challenged myself to do a half marathon in January, and I've started training for that. So, sharing that along the way. But anyway, to get to EMDR allowed me to finally finish that last piece of the puzzle of ending my own self-criticism. And again, like you mentioned earlier, it's different for different people. Not everybody necessarily need that.
That's true.
But where I was, that's what I needed, right? There's different ways of going about it, but that is what allowed me to have the clarity ultimately to get to the point that I was open enough and I'd let go enough, and I was aware of what always had been. And it was just helping people, ambitious individuals, and self-criticism with tools and strategies to create optimal everyday mental health.
I really appreciate you telling us about that. And I think that is fantastic that you actually created your own 5 pillars. I think that's wonderful. Was there something that inspired these 5 pillars, or was this something from your personal life that you sort of discovered?
It's all, obviously we get training in all sorts of things, right, and we know what's important and all that stuff. But fundamentally, this is all generated from my life and my understanding, reinforced by my training, reinforced by my clinical experience. But it's born of, everything that I've learned through my own experience and learned through others like you, like Nicole, like, any of the books that I've read over the years and the courses that I've taken, that sort of thing. It's a accumulation of 35 years of some highs and lows that go into, ending self-criticism.
Well, I love that because, we aren't going to go into that, but there is scientific evidence to back each of your 5 pillars, whether it be in a psychology book or a biology book. It is there. And I also want to say EMDR was the crowbar or the tool or whatever you call that helped crack open where to get back to your mission and who you were fundamentally. But I have to hand it to you to say this. It wasn't just the EMDR. It was also you accepting feedback from others that said, hey, you're going through a rough time. I really think you should try this. That was acceptance and openness. Even if you were not feeling it at the time, you eventually had that perspective and the attitude that I'm going to let this process work on me. Because whether you're in any type of counseling, psychotherapy, physical therapy, naturopathic medicine, going to a doctor for something else, the attitude of openness and allowing and trusting that this practitioner can help me if I am allowing them to use their process and if I am participating in the process, because that is a risk and that is scary to participate and not just stay in my judgment zone or my comfort zone or whatever. So the reason EMDR worked so well for you is because I actually think it was the right therapy for you based on your everything we talked about earlier, but also because you allowed the process to work on you, and you were at that point where you said, I just need something to work. This is never where I envisioned my life going after graduation, and I just need something to work. And you trusted that something would change and that the pain you were going through was temporary, and then you had tremendous relief, and not just relief, but a tremendous boost. And so I wanted to put that out there, that it was also, there was so many other things you talked about how you approach a therapy and how you approach a change and how you do that. But that relationship with yourself and not criticizing yourself for needing to go to therapy, okay? That is important. I hear that all the time. I don't want to go to therapy. I don't need that. Okay. Well, yeah. It is such an attitude. Somebody said, I can't remember who said this, but they said, you're the one you have to deal with your whole life. So why don't you start liking yourself? Why don't you start learning to have a relationship with yourself? You are stuck with yourself. Whether you can get in a relationship, you can get in 20 relationships. You can keep yourself busy ad nauseum with Netflix and internet and jobs or whatever. But you have to wake up and go to sleep in your own body, and you're in your own mind. And so it may be challenging. There may be barriers. There may be trauma. There may be physical limitations. There may be cultural barriers. There may be all sorts of things that seem to constrict you from being able to work on the relationship with yourself. But sometimes all it takes, if you don't have a trusted friend, is a journal and new information from someone, anyone, anywhere that is a healthy, trusted professional. So that being said, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's just the part about being self-critical when you need help. I'll put it this way. Look, I get it, because I was so there, right?
Oh yeah.
Just like,
I remember.
I've done all this work, I've done all this transformation, and now I need EMDR. Like, why? I rejected your idea at first.
That's true. You did.
I did. Let's not have revisionist history here. I was like,
you did.
No.
The first phone call, you said,
Paul, I want a little more
that.
empathy here, not a solution. But it didn't take me very long to say, yeah, man, he's right. But then I was dragging my feet for a few weeks. Actually, I'm pretty sure that almost right after I hung up with you, I was like, he's right. But then I still was dragging my feet for a few weeks until it really hurt enough. But
well, we had a relationship where I called you back and said, "Hey, did you call the person?" And you're like,
yeah.
I was getting to it on Tuesday.
Haven't gotten to it yet.
And I was like, and I was a bit of a beast because we have a relationship. I was like, you're telling me that you're suffering and depressed and upset more than you've been since 7 years ago or whatever it was, and I think we need to do this. But you were receptive. Well, the thing is, at that point, I think.
We all need momentum, right? To get started from a dead stop is the hardest. It's
so
the hardest
hard.
For
that's why I said
it's hardest for us.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why it's critical to get momentum going. And I have 2 points with this. One was, in order to get that started, I needed the tough love from you. And I kind of recognize that now as I'm working with more with other people, is that, yes, I'm always the empathetic ear for my patients, my clients, family, friends. Then we get to a point that it's like, okay, you needed to vent, but once it starts turning into a chronic complaining is not a strategy, right? So that's why on the Dr. K show, and somehow we haven't talked about this at this point. But on the Dr. K show, I have 3 segments, and the last one is a segment that I call Bring the Heat. And what Bring the Heat is simply a motivational speech. It's a short minute and a half, and it's designed, usually themed with the subject of that week's episode. It's to help you get that little bit of a tough love push to get you to start a little bit. You take one small action, the next day get 1% better, a little bit more action, third day a little bit more action, then you can get moving out of a dead stop. And that's what you provided for me, which ended up being EMDR, and then it's like snowballs. It does its job. And the other thing you mentioned was the importance of journaling. And incidentally, we didn't talk about this, but I found that out myself because I was one of those people that I've heard from you and others, and read the research, and like journaling is so important, especially for mental health, right? But really for everybody, life, right? There's aspects of writing, especially with pen and paper, not typing. There's aspects of when you're writing, the physical act of writing incorporates a lot of your left brain activity, right? And that allows almost like a distraction, allows your right brain to be a little more creative and explore rather than being so analytical. If you're like me, hyper analytical. So it allows you to open up. But this whole idea of like open-ended journaling, I would give up because I was just like, I don't know what to write about today. And I would always just be critical about what I started writing. Like, this doesn't make sense. This is not a properly formatted paragraph or what. And I just give up on journaling. So ultimately, what I decided though is, okay, what if I created a journal that was, because I always wanted to see what my goals were every day, and I wanted to remind myself my 3-month and 1-year goals, as well as my tasks for the day, like the most important things I needed to do. But then I also wanted something structured to go through every morning as part of my routine to not only put myself in the right mindset for the day, but allow, practicing gratitude and planning for if my days goes off course, how am I going to course correct? So I created something that was a little bit more structured, along with a schedule that if you can write down your schedule for a day for the day so that you kind of plan ahead, but also to track again those elements of everyday mental health. So your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, right? And then finally at the end of the day, I have the end of the day little journaling piece, like one thing I did today that makes me proud, and one thing that I can improve. And it's just 2 simple questions as prompts. And all of the elements of this journal are written in the past, or sorry, in past tense. Yes. So even though I'm writing it in the morning, I'm saying the one thing I did today, the most important thing I did today was I did, because I'm writing as if I've already done it and time just hasn't caught up. Right. And it ingrains that as fact, and then I execute better. So I created this journaling system for myself because it was really a journaling system for me, the person who doesn't like journaling. And as I was working with a couple of clients, came up in conversation. I was like, hey, Doc, can we have that? I was like, oh, yeah, sure. So I gave it to them. Like, this is really good. This is really helping me. So enough people asked for it. So actually, if you are like me, hyper analytical person, you don't like journaling because it's too open-ended. You want something structured that will help you seize control of your morning, reclaim your morning so that you can execute on the rest of the day the way you intend to. Don't let the day get out of hand right away. You can go to drkjournal.com, drkjournal.com, and you can download my journal for free.
Oh, wow. I didn't know we were getting a gift. I love that. I think I might download that because I know that journaling is important. And when I do journaling, I feel great. And when I don't, I sometimes drift from things I want to do. So I think I'm going to pick that up myself. Speaking of Dr. K, Dr. Karthik Ramanan, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. You've alluded to having a show and some other services. So can you tell us about what you're doing, how people can find out about you, and maybe where you're going with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a weekly episodic show called The Dr. K Show. You can find it on YouTube at drkshow.com, drkshow.com. And that'll take you to the YouTube playlist, and you can subscribe to my channel there for future episodes. I also post it on LinkedIn, Instagram a little bit delayed. Really, YouTube has the best one because it's got the bloopers and all that stuff. So if you want, raw and real, just completely me, who I am, you want the YouTube version. So, but basically, the premise of the show is I'm answering questions that are inspired by my audience, the things that my audience struggles with in the realm of everyday mental health, the things that come up as a person who is dealing with self-criticism, the tactical challenges of life. So I have a video, for instance, on the best foods for anxiety. So if you struggle with anxiety, you're a self-critical person right now, you will change. What are the things to focus on for food? A lot of, again, relationship with self type of videos as well. I talk about the 5 pillars of everyday mental health, and the different topics are in those 5 categories: relationship with self, relationship with others, nutrition and fasting, sleep, and exercise. So really, the purpose of the show is to help you overcome self-criticism with those tools and strategies for optimal everyday mental health. And I've got 3 segments on the show, and they're really short episodes, usually between 5 and 7 minutes. But the first part is answering, the premise of the episode. The second part is a segment I call Progress Success, which is inspired by the audience, K Nation. people just like you. And what I like about progress success is that it's not about, hey, I reached the destination. Well, guess what? I reached my destination of losing 100 pounds once, and I wasn't happy. Right? I lost 100 pounds, but I would still look in the mirror to myself when nobody's looking. I'd grab a little flab on the side of my abdomen and be like, it's not enough. I never felt like it was enough. Right? And so it's not about the destination. Yes, you want to get healthy and all those things, but the most important thing is to have fun in the process and making progress. Whether like the smallest wins can be the biggest change as time goes on. So I love celebrating the small wins for my audience, and that's what that second segment is. And then I mentioned the third segment and the final segment, which is bring the heat, and that's the impassioned, motivational speech that really is designed to help you get excited and get started, and we go from there.
Wow. So I'm going to put this link in the notes, but it's the Dr. K Show. Is that what what's the YouTube name?
Yeah, it's the YouTube channel is Dr. Karthik Ramanan, and we can put the links to all that down below. But if you just want to go quickly to the playlist, drkshow.com, and it goes to the YouTube playlist, so you can subscribe from there on any of those videos. But yeah, that's the quickest way to get to it. But yeah, I have a lot of fun doing that. It's a weekly show, like I said. And then also for people that want a little bit more of the behind the scenes and kind of real time things with a little funnier side, I post on Instagram stories and whatnot too. So if you want to follow me there. But ultimately, if any of you are interested, any of you listening are interested, and you feel like, hey, I know I want to do more with my life. Maybe it's leaving my job like you did, Dr. K, and doing something entrepreneurial that I believe in. Or maybe it's, I just can't seem to take action on the things that matter to me because I keep holding myself back. And, I'm dealing with perfectionism all the time, or whatever the case may be. If you're in that ballpark, I encourage you to subscribe to the show. But also, I'd really love to hear from you and the things that you're struggling with, because I'm at a season of, my career right now where I'm constructing, services. Obviously I do one-on-one coaching, and, if you want that, we can talk about that. I do offer a free 15-minute consult, so we can talk for a little bit and see if that makes sense. And I also want to understand what you're going through, so that, again, I can create, whatever type of support, whether it's a private group, whether it's, an online course, to help you execute on your passions and end self-criticism, create those strong pillars of everyday mental health. So I would love to hear from you.
Well, I love that service, and I like that it's very accessible, free information on YouTube. And then if they want more, I know you'll have more to offer through the coaching and other things that you're coming up with. So that is great. I'm excited to hear how you're doing things now, which is, I think, quite unique for doctors. And I think it's really, you've got a heart for people, and I think it's a great way to reach people, because I've said this before, but we're swimming in information. People have information all over. The application of the information and the implementation of things that are well documented in science, I think is the human struggle. How do we actually change that behavior, change that attitude? And something you said struck me, which was have fun in the process. And I love that. I think that's something I'm going to start trying to bring in. I guess I do bring a little bit of that into my counseling, even though I do trauma-informed therapy. Once the person is feeling better, I do bring some humor into the process, and hopefully some fun too, some fun assignments or some fun things we discuss together. So I think that's an incredibly important part of this, because we have a potential to have a joyful life despite whatever you've been through, whatever trauma you've been through in the past. And you may need help or support to get to that point. But I'm just grateful, Karthik, that you have shared your story and your transformation and how you're helping others right now. And I think that's fantastic. It's very unique, and I think well needed in our society, which I think focuses on a lot of things that are quite negative and destructive to our health and our mental health and our relationships, and therefore leaves people in a self-critical, self-loathing state, and a stressed out state. And we discussed earlier how stress actually is something that really can bring out our most, difficult parts of ourselves, or really, it can really hurt us and bring us to the brink. So, yeah, that's what I've got to say about that, Dr. Ramanan. What do you? Anything else you got to say to summarize?
Well, just I would love to connect with you. I'm always open to on Instagram DMs. I have conversations with people all the time. I'm very open. I think you've figured that out by this point, but also I feel that allows me, the fact that I have gone through so many things that I know many of you have gone through, it allows me to understand at a deeper level and help you apply some tactical wisdom to help yourself, really get to that place that you want to be. Because ultimately, when it boils right down to it, I believe all of us have a purpose in this world, and it's a great purpose. It's not just to go to work every day, come home, eat whatever we can get our hands on, watch a bunch of Netflix or whatever the case may be, and then just go do it again, right? That's not what we were made for. I believe all of us have a purpose that exceeds that by a long shot. And if we just listen to our life and listen to our heart, we'll be able to figure that out. But a lot of us, if you're like me, hold ourselves back because we're self-critical. And that's what I would love to help you end, so that you can really be the person that you want to be. Because ultimately, I believe in people even if nobody ever has.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great message to have on this show, because that is what we do, which is helping people to believe in themselves and to be not critical. You do need someone in your life who believes in you. And whether that's a friend or a mentor, or I heard the other day, if you don't have family, you have framily, which is friends as family. Yeah. But also, that's hard to come by. So a lot of times people can come to a doctor or a counselor, and that is the first person that's ever believed in them. And that can go a long way. It goes a lot further, I think, in the realm of meaning, to help that person become who they can be and ultimately impact the rest of whoever they're surrounding themselves with in an excellent way, in a needed way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this also, and I didn't realize this when you recommended EMDR and to see a therapist, but because I have people like you, friends like you, that are so knowledgeable, and you professional, you do this, so the idea of, well, I have people that can help me that are really informed, but I totally underestimated the value of having somebody in my life that I can go to. And by the way, I still go to her, and I would say that I'm cured, so to speak, but I still go to her because, again, it's about being preventative and being my best self. And I don't go as frequent as I used to. I used to go every week. Now I go every 6 weeks. But it's to the value of having somebody who is outside of your day-to-day life, your friends, your family that are kind of maybe involved in any of the stories or the stresses or whatever that's going on, right?
Yeah.
And have somebody that's totally independent, who's totally able to just listen and not judge because they're not in the midst of everything. Right? I did not. Like I totally underestimated how powerful that was. And so just to your point, having somebody that knows how to help you, that's not intertwined in your day-to-day life, is so valuable.
I could not agree more, Karthik. I appreciate that comment. And yeah, I'm excited to let people hear this episode, to put it out there, to have all of your contact information in the show notes below. And people can access your stuff for free. And if they're interested, they can go further. Yeah, I just thank you so much for being a good friend and being a guest on this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend.
And there you have it. I certainly enjoyed my discussion with Dr. Karthik Ramanan, and I hope you did too. If you are enjoying the Intentional Clinician podcast, please share it with people you know. I would surely appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more about Dr. Karthik Ramanan and his work, there will be links in the show notes. If you're interested in knowing more about my work and what I'm doing, I will also have those same links and a bio in the show notes. Until next time on The Intentional Clinician, I am wishing you all the will to keep going and keep growing. Hey everyone, if you're a clinician like I am, you may be looking for the best medical records out there, especially electronic medical records, which I find highly convenient. If you're looking for that, I recommend Simple Practice. If you're interested in trying it out, I have a link in the notes to this episode for a 30-day free trial. And if you utilize the link I provided and decide to subscribe at the end of the 30 days, the Intentional Clinician podcast will get a small referral fee. I thank you in advance. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss and his guest, and while these may be based upon the literature and experience in the fields that these people are in, they should not be viewed as the definitive opinion on any subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you are in a crisis, please dial 911 or the National Suicide Prevention Line. Call 1-800-273-8255. If you are in need of counseling, do not hesitate to make an appointment with a local counselor in your area. If you like, you can make an appointment with Paul or one of his associates by emailing or calling. The information for this is at www.healthforlifegr.com or paulkrauscounseling.com. You can also find it by Googling the Trauma Informed Counseling Center of Grand Rapids.